Are you in need of a virtual assistant? Well, at J. Logan Business Support Services, a virtual assistant company, we focus on helping you maintain and or streamline your business operations while minimizing the hassle of busy work. To request services, contact us at info@jloganbizsupport.com or visit our website at jloganbizsupport.com and allow us, your virtual assistant, to lift the weight while leaving you with peace of mind.
All right, y'all. We are back out of the break, and we got our special guest in the building. I gave a great introduction, but I'm gonna do it again. This is a guy considered a community activist. He's a pastor, family man, and an example of what you want to be as far as the walking in your purpose and just continuing to knock down those doors that people deem impossible. And he's also now a two-time author. Two books now under his belt. He got a brand new book that I'm gonna let him tell you about. We bring him on to the platform. Welcome to the Elite Life Show, Pastor CT Kirk. Welcome on, sir.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me as your guest on tonight.
No doubt, man. So tell our audience here at Elite Life a little bit about yourself, a little background on you.
All right, I was born and raised in Rock Hill. I attended Rock Hill High School, which is probably the greatest high school in the city of Rock Hill, Bearcat Nation. And so after that, I got married, and my wife's name is Monique. She's a school teacher, and we have three children, and pretty much encouraged me to get into education. And so at the age of 28, I entered into college working on my bachelor's and then became a school teacher. And from that, went on to get my master's. I'm also a pastor in the city of Rock Hill of the Sanctuary of Life Outreach Center Church.
And that's awesome, man. And it's a lot in what you said, man. But when you talk about things that inspired you and things that impacted your life, family is definitely important, and able to see the growth in all of that. So I want to ask you about your books, and I want to go back to when you first started writing. What inspired you to want to start writing and want to start telling your story from your point of view?
I have an author at our church. Her name is Dr. Kimberly Johnson. She's wrote over 24 books, and she kept pushing me after many sermons to write a book. She said, your sermons are important, and they're books that people need to hear. And from that, I just kind of got the book. That first book, getting it out there was like, I can do this. And so it definitely pushed me to go forth and keep on writing, because a lot of us have stories that other people need to read, but because we don't take those time to jot those things down, take those notes, or even talk about it, a lot of important parts of our story get lost. And so people begin to speculate on where we come from because they don't know where we've been.
Yeah, you're right, man. True. And I wanted to ask you, what growth have you noticed in yourself from book one to book two?
Book two really pushed me to do a lot of research. So it showed me that I could fulfill my goal of being a historian, that I could really put the stories of African Americans in the forefront, that I could really research and then just gain a lot of insight and knowledge. The first book was more or less what God was speaking to me, my own personal experiences, but the second book was more on really making sure that I was accurate in my research and in my information. And I think that that growth is so important, because even on Facebook, you see people that quote things but don't really research things. We look at the first website that pops up to say that what we want it to say, and really don't research to make sure it's a scholarly journal or if it's really accurate. And so it really pushed me to go into some accurate information and pull up some things.
So what was it about yourself that you learned in the process as you were in between and going into the second book? What are some of the things that you learned about yourself?
I learned about myself that if you're determined, that there's nothing you can't do. That don't be motivated by people say about you or the labels they try to put you on, but your growth should be really in understanding and knowing what you've been called to do. I think that when a person believes in their own vision and their own passion, and I learned this, I think from watching an episode of Master P, I think everybody needs to get into the important aspect of branding yourself. Branding yourself means making yourself a household name. Don't not limiting yourself, but being able to take yourself into a whole different platform. And that's one thing that I understand that the growth about me was that I wanted to be a brand and not just a name.
Awesome. So let's get into the second book. Tell us the name of the book and what a little synopsis of what it's about. Let's start there.
Okay, the name of the book is "How the West Was Whitewashed," and it starts off with a literary review, and it shows us how Hollywood took stories of people in the West, and they formulated almost what we would call a white dominant society. I know that you're around my age. You remember westerns. In westerns, we always seen the white hero, the white man saved the day. He dressed in white, and then later on, the black was the symbolic of the bad guy. And so a lot of times in those westerns, whether it was Gunsmoke, whether it was Trinity, whether it was Clint Eastwood's Make My Day, we didn't see a lot of us in those movies. And then when we started seeing us in the movies, whether it was the Magnificent Seven, it was the Django, we always had a white savior that kind of rescued us. The Django, you had Dr. Schultz, who came and rescued him from slavery, taught him how to ride a horse, taught him how to shoot a gun. Oh, he's the best savior. Even died for the Django and his black wife. Or in Magnificent Seven, Denzel Washington surrounded by all of these different ethnicities to save him and help him save a town. And so even when they put black people in the forefront of westerns, it was still almost, hey, you need this white man to help you get over. And so when I began to research the West, I realized that a lot of things that were done by people of color, whether it was the Asians that built the railroad or the Hispanic culture that gave us cowboy boots and cowboy hats, or if it was the African Americans that brought song, in which today we call country music, or Bass Reeves, who was a lawman who had so many people afraid of him that he was one of the most powerful lawmen in the West. He would wear disguises to trick his enemies, and from his story came the movie or and the show The Lone Ranger. And so knowing these things were very impactful for me, and so I think that this book is going to open up our eyes to see our impact in the West, because that when I was writing the book, I was like, this is territory not many people touch. Everybody touches slavery, everybody touches Africa, everybody touches civil rights movement, but nobody's hitting on that West.
Wow. So man, that's a lot of insight, and it definitely I can't wait to get my hands on the book. I want to ask you what why should people go out and purchase this book? Like, this is your promo, this is your commercial right here. Why purchase? You know what I'm saying? Your brand new book.
I think people need to purchase it. First of all, if I said Bass Reason, nobody got excited about it. They should purchase this book. If I say Stagecoach Mary and you don't get excited about it, you need to purchase this book. If I say Brett Johnson and you like Brett Johnson, who you need to purchase this book, because when you purchase this book, this is the things that we did not learn in school. The information that would have made it. Whereas when heard Lil Nas X for the first time, we didn't call him a sellout, or we know who Charlie Pride is, we know who Cowboy Troy is. This is the groundwork for showing us that football and basketball shouldn't be the only sports that African Americans are known for, especially when a man by the name of Will Pickney utilized rodeo and did some things in rodeo that made it an awesome sport today, in which African Americans out west are still getting high regards in. And so I think that when we think about this book, we're thinking about the things that our teacher didn't teach us. That if we would have knew these things, instead of playing cowboys and Indians, we were trying to be white, we'd say, you know what? No, I'm a black cowboy. And the Indians are not the bad savages that are trying to take over America, but these are the ones that really had America and got it stolen away from them. And so I think that this book is going to be impactful for people who love to learn and want their insight and their knowledge to expand and grow.
And without question, co-sign on that. Like I say, I'm super excited to get my hands on the book myself, and so that brings me to a question, man. I told you in the thing it was like exclusive interview with Pastor CT Kirk, and I wanted to get some insight, some of your knowledge on some things. So I wanted to ask you, what motivates you? What keeps you going? What keeps you rejuvenated in your spirit to keep moving on and completing different goals that you got?
Creating a legacy, I think, is so important because so many of us, as African American men, are not walking into a legacy that someone else set. A lot of us are the first ones. I mean, when I sat down and I talk to marriage couples, I say, "Well, name me a marriage couple that you know, or somebody that was really impactful that you would want to pattern your marriage after." And to hear so many people say, "I don't know anyone," I'm the first, and so that really it stuck out of my mind that sometimes you got to be the first. You got to be the first ones to pull out new information. You got to be the first ones, like you doing with this radio show. You're the first one in your family that probably has a radio show, and so it pushes us to learn. It pushes us to grow. And yes, there's sometimes that you get fear, but then you understand. Wait a minute, I'm the first one to do this, and so I wanted to be the first one in my family that somebody could say, "Hey, he's a book writer. Hey, that's a school teacher. Hey, that guy's got a master's degree." I wanted to be the first one, and so I was driven by legacy because I want my children to be able not to see the hurts and the pains from our past, but to see what their dad tried to symbolize right now so that they can go forward in a brighter future.
Definitely, man. And you covered two questions in one because legacy is definitely something that's important. And so when you look at yourself, you look at the impact that you've had, it kind of seems like it's a thing of I'm not done yet. I'm just getting started. No matter what I do, it's never a period to the story. I'm always looking for how I can impact my community more. So I asked you this. Me and you had a conversation a few years ago, and you said when I get that building, and I never forgot that conversation. In a few months ago, I seen that building came into fruition. Talk a little bit about the steps and the faith that you had to keep in order to get to that point, to not give up and not, because sometimes we can get discouraged and things seem like they're so far off, and you're just trying to figure it out. So talk a little bit about that journey and now coming into, where you are in the new church home.
Yeah, man. One thing a visionary has to always understand is that if you are a visionary, the road is never going to be easy for you. You're never going to have all the support you want or the finances you want to launch out a vision, and that's when you know that God gives vision. Now, a lot of people have goals and a lot of people have dreams, but vision comes from God because is able to see beyond what you presently see. So, vision is that thing when you're driving by a lot that has a lot of trees on it, and you say, you know what? That's going to be a building. That's going to be a mall. That's going to be a church. That's going to be a road because you can see it before you see it. And if I would have waited on the church to be able to launch out vision, I would have been too late. But the vision had to be established. So when the church came, we already knew how to operate within it. And so our building now, and like you said, you can never get to a place where you just stop and celebrate victories because every time you celebrate a victory, it almost causes you to lose time, but you understand that the victories that God gives you is opening up other doors for other victories. And so you're learning that this victory is God showing me that I can do this. This victory is God showing me I can do this, but never getting content in just that vision. I mean, just that place where you're like, you know what, I ain't got to try no more. I ain't got to build anymore. And so walking into that building was just simply God saying, you know what, I still have favor over you and your ministry. And now what are you guys going to do now with the favor? And so being able to launch those things out in that building is our next process and goal to be able to say, okay, you know what, if we're going to win this community, God has already showed us faithfulness in being able to get a bigger building. Let's go do it.
Definitely. And I'm looking at your shirt, man. It says praise him anyway. And it takes me to the next question. 2020, a lot of people have said it's been a very complicated year. I want to get your view on what the message is in your mind of what people should take from it. Because I think a lot of times we get distracted by all the negatives that you forget to pull the positives. You forget to pull the lessons out of what is happening because everything that's bad is not created just for the bad. It's created for you to get something out of it, for you to get the lesson out of the blessing. And even when it's, the good, the bad, and the ugly is what I call it, if you don't grab anything out of it, that's when it's truly a loss. But I want to get your insight on it. What are you telling people? What are you telling people that are approaching you that maybe be discouraged, maybe struggling, maybe going through it? What's your message?
I told our church at the beginning of the year because I'm always careful of the next catchphrase. I'm always careful of the next one liner. And I knew that there was going to be a one liner for 2020. And I heard people early parts of December and January saying 2020 is a year of vision. You got to be able to see. So I went into our pulpit on the first Sunday in January. I said, no, we're not going to have 2020 vision. You got to have something beyond that. You got to have 2015 vision. 2020 vision allows you to see the letter letters, but 2015 vision allows you to see the line that's holding up the letters. And so what I meant by that was simply this: God is the line that's holding up the letters. And if all you see is what you want to see, if all you see is the letters, you're going to miss what God is doing. And a lot of people went into 2020, oh, I'm gonna launch out this vision, and then Corona happened, and then they all fell back. Well, not me, because I believe that Corona, what it did was it slowed the world down. So that rest we needed, that strategies that we needed, that moment to create those books, to write those plays, we had that time, and many people missed it because they were too busy harking and crying over what they felt like they lost in 20. I mean, during the coronavirus season. And what I realized is 2020 really showed us a lot of things that we didn't need, that we felt were important. How many people now looked in that closet and say, you know what, them Jordans weren't that important because 2020 showed me I ain't even had nowhere to wear them. So there's $300-400 in my closet just sitting there of outfits and clothes that's just wasting. I think a lot of times we miss things because we want things to go back to the normal way that it was, but I want things to go back to a better way.
Definitely, man. And it is a lot of people out here struggling and hurting. And the other thing that I've noticed this year is our youth. And talk a little bit about the message, because I've seen, our young men and our young women, kind of struggling through. They're so dependent on technology that they have no idea that there's a whole nother way of learning and a foundation. And I've seen you pouring those things into your children. And you even made a statement that was is so impactful to my spirit. You said, the moment that I'm not a hero to my kids and my family, that's when it's truly a loss. Like everything else that can exist, I can be everything to everybody else. But if I'm not that strength to my family, then I'm nothing. Talk a little bit about that, and then talk a little bit about the what message you would send to all the youth that are watching this program this evening.
I never wanted my children to have a hero of someone they couldn't see. I don't think Michael Jordan needs to be my kid's hero, LeBron James, because these are people they don't know. These are only people they see on TV playing a sport. And playing a sport doesn't mean that you solve the cure for cancer or that you're healing the world. It simply means that you're athletic enough to play a sport. I didn't want them to look up to the Michael Jacksons of the world. And I know I'm old school, so I'm still talking about Michael Jackson when somebody else is probably more banging NBA YoungBoy then. All right, because these are people that you don't know. I think that a child's hero should be the people that they see, because these are the people that you watch that care enough about you to go to work every day in the cold and the rain. These are the people that are applying the knowledge and the things in your life that's going to be the message that's going to help you grow. The Bible says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he grows old, he will not depart from what? The message. So even though he's older, he has made some mistakes in his life. The message of his father and his mother are still going to be impactful in his ear. And I think that the only way that you're going to change the children is to change what the parents are saying, because evidently there's not enough parents saying enough stuff to motivate children to say, okay, you know what? I can motivate you so you don't want to be in a gang. I can motivate you so you don't want to sell drugs. I can motivate you so you don't want to go to jail. So my thing is, we need mothers and fathers motivating their children. Be your child's hero first, and then you won't have to get them to look to somebody else. The preacher should not be your child's hero if the child is with you more than he's with the preacher. The teacher should not be your child's hero if he's with you more than he's with the teacher. It's up for parents to say, you know what, I'm not going to pass the buck on to somebody else to be my child's hero. I want to be my child's hero. And when you do that, then you'll start seeing the children change. And so until parents get right, it's going to be hard to convince children, hey, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. Until it takes place at home, then it's almost going to be like fighting a losing battle.
What have you learned being in the classroom? I want to go to that because I've seen videos and I've seen different things. Is it more impactful being able to teach in person? And I know safety is a big thing, or is virtual more of a hindrance in hurting our children because they can't get that in person learning? What's your view on that?
Oh, virtual is definitely hard. It's probably hard for kids that are not excited about grades or parents that are not really pushing, because it is a different world. It is almost telling a child you're going to be responsible for what you hear and what you don't get to hear. And so you're going to do these assignments even when you have no teacher there. And so for a lot of kids, virtual is just like anybody who's at work that's on a long Zoom call. Your mind begins to wander. You begin to look around because we're asking children literally spend your whole school day in front of a computer, as aggravating as that is. And so one thing that I love about in-person kids is that you really get to know your kids. You really get to build a nucleus in the kids. And I realize that a lot of times the kids are teaching teacher more than the teachers are teaching the kids. There are some children that are so motivated motivated to learn, so excited about learning, that have been labeled because the system labels them. And so now that creativity, that driving thing is not being able to utilize. I don't want a classroom that's quiet. I think a classroom that's quiet doesn't tell me anything. I want a classroom that's excited when kids enter in, are excited about learning, because when they're excited about learning, they're retaining more information than just sitting down looking at a computer or looking at a teacher on a board. And so I think that for our children to really grow, first of all, our parents need to really look at them and say, okay, you got some gifts and talents that this teacher may not see, but I'm gonna bring it to their attention. Just a quick story: I had a young man that had test anxiety, couldn't pass no test. But I said, you know what? You're a great drawer. Once you draw me what we've been talking about, let me see if you can comprehend what we're talking about. And he could draw everything that I talked about. And I said, you know what? That's your test from now on. If you can show me that you can comprehend what I'm talking about in a drawing, I'll give you the same grade as I would give someone who did great on that test. Because that boy, and then he went on now, and he's a great drawer, and he's go to a school of arts because that was a gift on the inside of him. I told his mom, listen, this boy need to be in the school of arts. This boy is gifted in drawing. But if it would have just been A, B, C, D, F, then we would have never been able to pull out that greatness in him.
How different do you think it would have been during our time we were coming up in school if there had been more of, but maybe that child is a visual learner. Maybe because so much emphasis is put on testing and standardized. I was one of those, man. I didn't do well on standardized tests, but I can write out something and tell you my thoughts more so than just the A B C D type deal. So, what impact do you think will that have moving forward as you get more teachers that are thinking, okay, maybe this child, maybe I need to adjust what I'm doing and see if I can get what I need to pull out of this child. How do you think that's going to impact moving forward in the classroom?
I think that the biggest mistakes that parents and teachers make is we're trying to educate and grow children the way we were educated and we grew. And I remember being in the second grade, and my teacher at the time was probably in her 30s. So you take me being in second grade in 1986, 87, and you subtract 23 years, that meant my teacher grew up in a segregated classroom, which meant by the time I got to her, she had no experience of what it was like to be an African American man. She didn't know what it was like to be in the situation that I was in. And so she was trying to train me according to how she was trained. And a lot of people find themselves in that mode, even with parenting. They're trying to train their child the same way they was trained. And yes, that was good for you in the 80s, because you got to think about it, in the 80s, we weren't tempted by technology. Remember, the Nintendo didn't come out till we was almost entering 90, and
Right.
then we went crazy over that. And so we didn't have computers, we didn't have Facebook or Snapchat. And so our parents and our teachers trying to train us that, hey, stay away from this technology is almost going to be erroneous, because we were in a time when we went outside. Remember, if our parent would have told us back then you can't go outside, we'd have broke down crying and had a fit, because that was the punishment, and that was the way we were raised. And I think that parents and teachers have to grow within the system. You really got to sit down with children and understand where they're coming from now, because if we try to raise them the way that we were, we're going to miss it.
I'll tell you something really interesting, man. From kindergarten all the way to eighth grade, only had two male teachers.
Hmm.
I didn't see the multitude of male teachers until I got to high school at Rocky High. So, what is the difference? What are you seeing at your school, and how do you think that impacts a child? Because let's be honest, man, a lot of kids don't have that father figure. So sometimes the first time you run into that is in the classroom. How do you think that affects a child, and what have you seen on a personal level where it pertains to that?
I think we need a lot of males in education, but I see why a lot of males don't go into education, because society tells you that as a male you have to be the strong foundation for your family first. And if your career in teaching is not paying your bills, then a lot of men are not going to get into it. As much as they may love kids, as much as they may love change, as much as they want to be impactful as a mentor, you're not going to get too many men that's going to say, you know what, I'm going to turn down a job making $40 an hour to go in the classroom and just to show how much I care. And I think that what happens is parents need to get that voice up and say, you know what, we demand our teachers to be paid, because if we want good quality teachers, if we want males in the classroom, then we got to up the ante to get males in the classroom. Why do most black men want to play football? Why do most black men want to play basketball? Why do most black men want to become singers or rappers? It's not just for the love of the talent. It's because there's some finances that come with your talent. Do you think LeBron James would fall out as much as he was if he's only getting paid $40,000 a year to play basketball? Do you think Emmett Smith or Ezekiel Elliott would go that crazy if you was telling them, okay, I'm gonna pay you $20 an hour only when you play games? But because the finances meet the requirement of that job, they practice harder. They want to be the best in that. And I want to tell people right now that if you want quality teachers, you need to be calling your legislative branch. You need to be calling your governors and people say, listen, our teachers need to be paid.
Definitely, I agree 100%. It reminds me of a conversation I was having with Senator Mike Fanning. Man, we gotta quit underpaying our teachers and show because they are one of the pillars and the foundations in our community. You mentioned something about finances, and I wanted to ask you because I know you're gonna keep it real, man. Even when you get to financial success, you have some that it's about their families, and you ain't know you haven't seen that type of money before, and so that's something else that you got to deal with. Now you presented with more money than what you could probably ever spend, or you blowing it in a fast period of time. What what would you encourage as we're speaking to people all over the world? What would you encourage people that hadn't seen a lucrative amount of money before? What would you encourage? What would be your encouragement to what to do? Um, would it be getting financial literacy and learning more about what to do with your money so that you don't end up, broke in 5 years? I mean, what's your view on that? We had some technical difficulties, so we're going to go to the break. You're listening. You're watching the Elite Life Show here on TNE Network.
You gotta show me, man, how to.
All right, we back out the break when Pastor CT Kirk. We're gonna wrap up the wrap up segment. I just want to ask you, man, talk about some of the people that influenced you, and some of the people that you see as role models that continue to inspire you in this day and time.
Well, I listen to a lot of different people. I listen to a lot of different pastors. I also listen to a lot of deep people like Dr. Umar Johnson, who really just tells it like it is, who's a motivator and a speaker. I listen to Dr. Cornel West. I listen to pastors. One of my favorite is Dr. Rudolph McKismick Jr., who's a very great speaker. And so I'm motivated a lot by a lot of different people. I always tell people I'm from the foundation of my grandmother, Miss Mosea Cherry, who really set the foundation for strength, and then it passed down to my grandma Isabel, and then to my mother Brenda. And so I've seen a lot of strong people in my life that really motivated me, from great teachers. One of my favorite teachers is a guy by the name of Lincoln Sigwall, and Missy Cromer, who really told me the importance of learning history. And Missy Cromer told me the importance. You remember Drama Mama from Rocky High, who taught
Yeah,
me
yeah.
who taught me never to be normal and never settle for being normal. And so those people really impacted my life, and I still remember those words. Coach Perry Sutton, Coach Pat Kennedy from the Civic Circle Demons Association were very impactful in my life. And so I met a lot of great people along the way that really gave me deposits into my life and really helped me.
I'll tell you somebody that I know you remember that impacted my life back in my transition from what was junior high to be in the first ninth grade class was Coach Winborn.
Oh,
He had
yeah.
an impact, man,
I
on
bet
my
you didn't
life.
call him your Dale.
I never did. Wouldn't even
Don't
still
do
to
it.
this day wouldn't even go there. Um, but just a strong spirit of as a man, that's the type of respect that you want. You know what I'm saying? To make you just about, making sure that you pouring back in and you doing, great things. And I'll never forget the lessons that he, one on one took the time out to steer me in the right direction. If it was nothing more than you make sure you put that extra work into that assignment or that
Mhm.
studying or put your best foot forward and then make your athletics be the extra. You know what I'm saying? Because being a student comes first, and
That's right.
that was important. And you mentioned Perry Sutton, who was my first cousin. I've watched him, man, since I was a little kid, and just seeing the impact that he's had. And I'm so proud, of what he's done, the organization with the Demons. I know you played for him. It's just, there are more individuals like him and like you that won't take no for an answer. It won't go with just the being boxed in, but just thinking outside of the box is what I mean. I had an opportunity to work with you with the community cleanup, cleaning the trash. Man, I had never did anything like that before. But the pride that happened in those 2 to 3 hours that morning, I've never forgot those things. And those are the type of impacts that you want to have, across the board. And I think you've done a tremendous job of doing that. And I want to talk to you about what are some of the things like I've seen you be able to DJ, I've seen you be able to do the broadcast, and man, what fun have you grabbed out of those opportunities?
Man, I believe that everyone should live their life to the fullest and get excited about life. And so, DJing was just something that I wanted to really add into my classroom, to give it that flair because I understand the power of music and teaching and have a lively atmosphere. And so, in my classroom, you'll see a disco ball, you'll see LED lights. I got a wall of Dallas Cowboy Hall of Famers all on that wall. So that wall is decorated in cowboy things, and my kids get a good laugh at it every time we lose. It be you should put lose on your wall or something like that. But just being able to have and enjoy your life, because I think a lot of people they always complain or they always think about the things that defeat them, but they never look at how much good they have to offer. And so I'm just privileged because I'm a person from Green Street area that saw a lot of disparity and see a lot of successful men in my neighborhood. And really, from that neighborhood, you grew up kind of fast. And to be able to go to those neighborhoods now and knock on my old neighbors' doors, and they're older now, and say, you know what, I made it out, I made it. I just want you to know, that it may not be the most success, but I got a level of success that I'm proud of. And so those things really keep me pushing.
Being able to be an example about respecting your elders, those that came before us. Talk a little bit about what that takes because I see that ones that's coming up right now, man, don't have that
Yeah.
same thing implanted in them. What has kept you being the example in doing that? Because I've seen you have to do that because everything ain't positive. There are things that are thrown at you that's gonna test you and challenge where you at. So how are you able to maintain that respect all the way across the board?
I think young people need to understand that what your seniors have more so than anything, if they have gray hair or they're losing hair, that's because they were able to live outside of their mess. And a lot of young people are not living outside that mess. I tell people now when they're 40 years old, I remember old people used to tell me this, and I never caught hold of it. But I said, now, hey, you better hope you live to be 40. You better hope you live to be 60 because there's so many life lessons that we can learn from our older generation. And also, one thing that I noticed very important in community work is a lot of the older senior people have the connections that young people need when they're doing great work. And if you bypass an older person, if you bypass someone because you think you got it all, I tell everybody this. Saying you the greatest in Rock Hill don't really mean anything because there's a big world that don't know you. You could be great in Rock Hill and Charlotte never heard of you. Chester never heard of you. And so why just settle for Rock Hill when you can be so much bigger? And older person can help you get there. When I went down to Birmingham and went to the museum, I saw the Friendship Nine, and I went back and I told Reverend Dub Massey, man, y'all so big. Y'all in Birmingham's museum. Come on now, talk to me. And he began to mentor me and began to show me some things. Dr. Ronald King began to show me some things about community outreach. He showed me what to look for. He showed me how to do it. He trained me in it. Dr. Winslow Schott, the chiropractor, showed me some tools and some information that I needed to know. Miss Aaron Williams, so many, CP Roddy, Dr. Roddy. And so being able to sit around the seniors is not boredom to me. It's about learning history. It's about learning where you're going. In fact, talking to Dr. C.P. Roddy, she said, I want you to write our story about how I integrated Winthrop College. And I was like, you want me to write your story? And she was like, yes. And so being able to sit down and talk and just be able to expand your mind, I think will help young people a lot.
Talk about history, man. We're surrounded by. You think about Emmett Scott.
Mm-hmm.
You think about Boyd Hill. You think about Northside. You think about some of these places that we came up in those gyms and running in the back of those facilities. And my thing one day, I want to see those places grow. I want to see those places be even more pillars in our community. And I see that there's some movement going. We got to keep the foot on the gas because while everything else is growing, while we got things that are being created out here on the other side of town, we can't forget that we got a whole nother recreation centers and places over there that need to be, need love too, is what I
Mhm.
say. And the day that I see that happen, the day I can tell my kids that, hey, I rode my bike over there,
That's
and
right.
that place looks totally different from what it was when I was, little. Just to think that there's an air conditioning unit over there in Scott now, remembering when it wasn't like that. So those are the things that kind of jump, on. I'm gonna get you out of here on this, man. I want to know, um, because I know how important my wife is to my life, how much patience, understanding with it, busy as I stay, how important and how impactful is it, in the support from your wife? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, my wife is one of the greatest women that God ever put in the earth. I mean, to put up with me, not only, but to be excited about what God has called me to do. Because I think that as men, we got to understand that when God calls you to something, it takes a wife that believes in you to be able to believe in what God has called you to. I know a lot of times we want wives to say, hey, I heard what God called you to, but in order for her to really be able to pick it up, and this is the story of Adam and Eve, Adam had to teach Eve what God had told him. And so for her to know not to eat that fruit, that came from her husband. And I think that, our wives are fundamentally geared toward building us up bigger than what we could ever think or imagine. And I think that that's what my wife is for me. She is that motivator. She is that tool of encouragement to make me believe that I can do some things that I never thought was possible. And so I always tell men this, and we realize this along the time. Men do not create queens. A queen was birthed already from a king. All right. So when we got with them, they were already a queen. We ain't nothing we did add to their life. Now, did they make us a good king? Oh yeah. And so it's those things that add into our life that I think are very, very important.
Definitely, it's not a thing.
I
I
see your
think,
wife on the wall behind you.
yeah, that's it. Hey, again, if you ever wonder, it's that support system. She is that everything. She is that when the world is coming down on you, whenever the burdens of the world, man, it's that wife just stands by your side, and I can definitely utter the same sentiments. My wife is that, and then some, as far as being there in moments that people don't see. So I appreciate her and love her, infinity. Tell people, man, how they can follow you on social media and how they can go get your books, man, and keep up with what Pastor CT Kirk got going on.
Man, you can follow me on Facebook, CT Kirk. I also got an author page, CT Kirk Author, and it's probably going to be easier to join that page than it is to be my friend because I think I'm at the limit. But you can follow me around. I give updates. Our church page is the Sanctuary of Life Outreach Center, and from that we do our live sermons. But I do Bible study on my personal page, CT Kirk. Also, you can get the book at Amazon and at Barnes and Nobles. Also at author publishinghouse.com. Finna enter the book now into some awards. So be praying for us that we get an award to go with this book. So like I said, the award winning book. But definitely, please get a copy of this book. I'm telling you, it's going to change your life. It's something that I believe that every father ought to be reading to his sons and his daughters to let them know who they are. If you, like you said earlier, if we really want to change the young people's perspective, we got to tell them their history. We got to help them understand who they are so they don't try to be something they're not.
Got to continue to pour into our kids, our youth,
Right.
man, all around. And it's been an honor and a pleasure, man, to have you on the Elite Life show. I very much so have been looking forward to this interview, just to see the gems and the wisdom that you were gonna drop in this interview, and you didn't disappoint. So for that, man, God bless you, my brother, and
Thank you so
continue the
much.
support you'll get from me. Not just from the Elite Life show, but anything that I'm connected to. What I'm saying? You already got a seat at the table. So continue doing what God has you to do and walking in your purpose, man. And definitely, this won't be the last time that you'll be on my show. So I appreciate you coming through, and may God continue to bless you with
Thank you
everything
so
that you
much.
lay hands down.
Thank you,
Take
sir.
care. Any last shout outs, anything before you go?
I want to give a shout out to Rock Hill, South Carolina, Lancaster South Middle School, the premier middle school in Lancaster County. Big shout outs to them. I want them to know that I love them and I thank them.
No doubt, man. Appreciate you, man. You take care, Pastor Kirk, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, sir.
We will definitely be back after the break. Here you're looking at the Elite Life Show here on TNE Network. Back on the Elite Life Show, man. Want to thank Pastor CT Kirk for coming through. Awesome interview. He definitely came through and dropped knowledge. Again, appreciate everybody tuned in tonight, and look forward to the next episode 3. Episode 2 was a classic and it was epic. If you don't remember anything else, y'all, yeah, it only takes 8 seconds, man, that we take for granted that, we don't know what's going to happen in those 8 seconds. But it only takes 1 second for us to decide that we want to, give our life to God and be, and maximize our potential in this life. So don't overlook that. If you haven't and don't have the faith, discover the faith. You've been watching the Elite Life Show hosted by James JT Thompson. Good night. Take care. God bless.
King. Knowledge is king. Knowledge is knowledge is king. Knowledge is king. Knowledge